Welcome back. Welcome in. This is Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com. It's a Paramount podcast. I am Mike Casaz here on a Monday morning, ready to take some questions and provide some answers to help me out. Chris Anderson. Chris, we haven't talked since basketball. We talked, I don't know, about 40 minutes Saturday night. Could have been a better weekend. Fortunately, soccer, win over Marshall. Looking at some home games, maybe in the NCAA tournament. So not all is lost, but I think people would have a preference. I'd probably put football or basketball ahead of those two as far as getting a win, especially one's against Pitt, and one is perhaps to keep your Big 12 dreams alive. Should I go over the scenario about how West Virginia gets into the Big 12 championship game?
Please don't.
No?
I was ready for our first ever soccer podcast before we do that.
Okay.
Was
It's
Go
the
ahead.
dream's
Go ahead.
alive,
No,
Chris.
I know this is your thing. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No. It's unlikely. It requires two Colorado losses, two West Virginia wins, and everybody else at two losses basically to lose once. So probably not going to happen. But if you're an idiot like me, sometimes you'll do the math just because, like, all right, can I safely say that they're eliminated from contention? It's a line in a story, maybe it's a question in a news conference. No, I can't even say that today because there still is a mathematical odd um, that exists in West Virginia's favor. Anything on football or basketball that you want to put to bed before we take some questions that might otherwise touch on some topics we have not yet touched on?
Um, there are a couple of questions in here about basketball. I don't know if we're going to get to them on this podcast, but I'll go ahead and say it out loud. I'm not sold or buying on the basketball team quite yet. We won't. I don't think we're going to know what this team is until, I mean, honestly, until Jaden Stone comes back and is healthy, and then you really get to see what's going on. The Joseph Yusufu thing is a little bit strange. Like, he was banged up in the preseason. He was late to kind of get started with the team, and I'm not sure what his role is. Played limited minutes again against Pitt. Iona's not going to answer our questions on Wednesday. So I'm really paying attention to what's going to happen in the Bahamas and see what happens there. Like, am I expecting wins? Hopefully at least one. It's not going to be easy, but at least I think we'll get a better idea of what this team is. So if you're asking me to judge this team off of quite honestly, an abysmal showing against Pitt on Friday night. I mean, it was bad. Like, there's no denying that. The real question is, was that a one-off thing? Was that just a bad night? Or is that a sign of things to come? And I don't have an answer to that and probably won't until we at least get into the Bahamas.
If they don't win the game in the Bahamas, Chris, they're at best an NIT team.
Hmm.
Just the math. I was doing the math in my head yesterday. Like you're gonna have to get to 17 regular season wins and probably one in the Big 12 tournament. So to get to 17 means you're going to have to win. Right now, the most they can win is 10 non-conference games. That means seven Big 12 wins. And if you go 0-3 there, so you got four losses, that means the best you can be in non-conference play would be 7-4. Now you got to get 10 Big 12 wins. It's probably not happening. So yeah, that's the math adds up quickly on this one. It'll be really interesting. It's also possible, Chris, that we were wrong. Don't tell anybody this, but KJ Tenner may be the eighth guy, the third guard off the bench, over Yusufu right now. He's just better. Um, it's hard to ignore that he's more confident offensively, quicker. It looks like too. Not scared. Not scared. I don't know how it looked on TV. I thought West Virginia looked a little hesitant and kind of shook by their own struggles early in the game. He did not. He was coming in, getting his floaters, getting in a lane. It was pretty important work he did in small sample, but they actually had a pretty good game from the bench. I don't know if that was because it was easier, because they were getting beat pretty bad, or if they actually had something going. But um, Powell, 4 for 10 from three, it's going to be his game. What can Stone do if and when he comes back? You're right. That's a good question, but one we might not have an answer to for a while there. All right. Let's do the blindfold and cigarette routine and just go to these questions and try to answer as best as we can. A lot of frustrated fans after West Virginia loses yet again at home, yet again, one-sided fashion. Even though the final score is 14, it felt like it was worse than that. Even though it felt like it was closer than that. Strange game, strange season. Again, it's hard to get a thumbs up or a thumbs down from these guys, and Saturday was proof of that as well. So let's try to solve what we've not been able to solve for 10 games in 12 weeks.
Again, these questions are from our VIP members. They post them on the board. Other members then upvote them, the ones that they like the most, and those are the ones we answer first. So we are nothing if not a democracy. But the questions you are going to see, especially the first handful, After that, there's a lot of similarly voted ones and might mix those up a little bit to switch in to get a couple of those on the 3-minute videos and so on. But the first handful were very clearly the most upvoted questions on the thread. So these are what we assume the fans want answers to.
Mhm.
And the first one, Mike, are you ready? I don't know if you did you look to see which one was the most upvoted?
I
This
saw it
one's pretty
early and I kind of figured I have an idea. I saw it early and I kind of figured that was going to float to the top, but I have not seen the final results.
Milton Ear 59 asks quite plainly, why should anyone care anymore? And I mean, there's a lot of reasons you could probably give for that, but I think the fact that that is the question and that is the most upvoted question is the problem, right? Like that's the feeling from the fans right now, that that's the problem. Not the fans aren't the problem. The fact that the fans feel that way is the problem.
Yeah. And what's the solution? It's probably to just change everything and everybody because the results aren't going to change if the people don't change. That's the concern is that, well, we've seen this for 6 seasons now. And again, you have a really good situation fall into your lap and you fumble it, twice, if we're honest. Three, if you count Penn State. I get it. So does he mean why should he care anymore this year? Probably shouldn't. You're looking at a 6-6, 5-7, a 7-5 team, something like that. You're looking at a very ordinary bowl game. If you're into just a single lane view right now, big picture, why should you care? It's hard to run that back, Chris, because I think last year you could have had a little bit of optimism. Yeah, you could have had optimism last year. And when this comes as a result of that, if you look at who they're going to say goodbye to on senior day on Saturday, and then just irresponsibly guess who's going to transfer, and not because we know something or because this is a bad situation. It's just college football. It is. You're going to have that happen. A lot of holes they got to plug. And you might say, well, this redshirt freshman or this guy who's redshirting or this sophomore. Yeah. Has that always been the case? Like, have we seen a lot of internal fixes or maybe so, but have you seen that many? Probably not a great argument there. And then, okay, well, they'll use the transfer portal. Been paying attention to that too. The hit rate on that isn't very good. So I can see there being reason for suspicions or skepticism. And so let me try to answer the question. What do you care about? That would be my question. Do you care about this group as situated, getting it together and moving forward? Well, then you would care about the next two games. If you care about getting West Virginia football back in the top 25, back in legitimate conference championship contention in November, you're probably rooting for the iceberg right now. And that's a hard thing for people to do because they don't want to do that. They want to see their teams win. And even if you like a coach or a staff or whatever, and you don't like what they're doing on the field, it's hard to separate those two things sometimes if you're a fan because man, this guy lost his job or this family's got to move or something. You don't want to root for that bad stuff. But I just feel like that's the situation you're in right now. Is that either you really hope that you finish strong and you're better at what you weren't good at this year as far as continuity and running it back and being better, or you root for change, which is not an easy thing for people. So why should you care? Because you might get an outcome that you want and don't want to cheer for, and you might get an outcome that you want to cheer for but you don't want, which is really between the rock and the hard place.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult to care, as you noted, for the last couple games. It's really going to be like, is there a difference between 7-5 and 6-6? Yes, there's a slight difference at 5-7 because there's the bowl game involved, but do you really care if you like, your team goes to a bowl game at 6-6? I mean, how many fans are in on that? How many of these players are actually going to play in that? You might care because hey, maybe some of these young guys get some time. Again, you're really stretching here for a lot of the reasons to care. And you made note of this is where it gets so difficult is you're already looking ahead to next year and there's not much hope. Like there's just not. Like regardless of the coaching situation, whatever you think about that, you look at this roster, you're going to lose your without even talking transfer portal. Your starting quarterback, your starting tight end, couple starting receivers, four of your five starters on the offensive line. your entire starting defensive line, to your top two Spur Bandit, whatever, your top two cornerbacks, your top safeties. What are you looking forward to? Like, this isn't like last year where they went 9-4. And you're like, man, look at all these guys coming back. It's going to be an overhaul, which again, that goes into the discussion we've had a couple weeks ago of does that further push the administration to just go ahead and make a change? Like, hey, 2025 is going to be rough. Like,
Mhm.
what's your hope for Neal Brown in 2025, given what's already happening, given what you're about to lose on the roster? Like, yeah, I don't even know what you would have to get out of the portal to make this a competitive team in 2025, given all that they're losing. So,
Yeah.
I,
Here's the hard part too, because
yeah,
here's the similar predicament with running it back and trying to patch it together. And we mentioned this on the post game podcast. If this is indeed not Jeff Coons, and Saturday was an indication that it's probably not going to go his way. Maybe he gets it right the last two games, but if they come back at 6-6, 5-7, whatever. But let's just say they come back at 6-6. You have a hard time selling everybody on keeping your staff intact. And maybe Jeff Coons gets to stay as a linebackers coach and special teams coordinator. That's not my issue there. How do you get a defensive coordinator? Who are you going to hire? You could throw a lot of money at somebody, but you're on a boat sticking on water right now. And do you believe it's going to turn around? Can you be that guy? I think a lot of coaches have that internal belief, but you're 1 out of 10 and you're one side of the ball in a three-sided game. That's a hard thing to talk yourself into if you're leaving a good situation where you're an up and comer to a situation that is going the other direction. That's hard to do. Well, similar with the portal, Chris, for two reasons. West Virginia is right in about the bottom, what would you say, about the bottom quarter of NIL in the Big 12. I don't care what other websites say. That's true. They're in the bottom quarter, about $3.5 million. That can go up, but who's giving you money? Who's your defensive coordinator that's going to make a leap? Who's the donor that's going to make a leap and give your NIL a lot of money? And then fine, you have money. What about the players, Chris? Are they coming into a situation that might have a midseason coaching change next year that might go 5-7 and clear house afterwards? So it's not even the guys who are here for 1 year; it's the guys who could be here for multiple years. There's just a lot of stuff like that that you really have to wrap your head around. And there's no easy button here. That's the hard part. There's no easy button. The only thing is that I think if you look at your schedule next year, Chris, oh, that's about as good a look at 3-0 in non-conference that I've had in a long, long, long time. And I just wonder if you do make a change, can you get September hopping? And new guy syndrome comes in and he wins against Robert Morris. That would be West Virginia's first 1-0 start in a long time. They go on the road, they beat Ohio, they come back home 2-0 against Pitt. Who knows? Who knows? Went for 3-0. And all of a sudden everything looks good. Everybody's a genius. Contrast that with what if Neal Brown goes 3-0 next year? I don't think you have the same excitement. And through no fault of his, he would have done his job. But everybody's gonna be like, I know the rest of the words to the song. And that's a just imagine being in that situation. You can do something really good you haven't done before, and it's not gonna be good enough for people. And that's just a strange reality right now that's hard for me to shake. And I don't know how an administrator or a fan would do that.
I'm going to interject with my own question here, Mike, because and this is going to be somewhat controversial, I'm sure, for many of the people that are watching and listening. But do I think that Neal Brown is a bad coach? I do not. I think he does know what he's doing. I think he's had some rough goes. I don't think he's helped himself. I don't, like made mistakes. They've had trouble building the roster. A lot of issues early on with retaining talent and bringing in talent. But does it matter what if you're Ren Baker? Does it matter what you, Ren Baker, think about Neal Brown if the fans don't believe? Right? Like
Mm.
it matters more what the fans think as that's it. Right? Like it does matter more what
Sure.
the fans think than what you personally think if you're the athletic director in this
Well,
instance.
yeah, subjective to a point though. But yeah, I think you're right. At some point, you've got to like open your blinds and look outside and see the torches and the pitchforks because they don't go down Neal Brown's driveway. They're coming down your driveway. You don't want that. You got to be attentive to that. I don't know how much that matters, but I think it does. But then there's perception and reality. And just this is an example. I don't know where it is right now, but a lot of people might say, boy, he's lost the team. He's lost the locker room. You hear that so often when a team goes bad. And like I don't think that was the case before Saturday night. And I haven't talked to enough people to say that Saturday night changed it, but we talked about this. it didn't look great. It just looked like there was a resignation. Like, okay, this is our fate, this game this year, and ultimately happened. But if you're on the outside, you're saying he's lost the team, and Baker is around the team. He's on the flights in the locker room. He's talking to players and assistants, and he knows better. He knows different. I don't think the fan projection matters that much, or the fan opinion matters that much because he's more fact based because he's immersed. He's embedded with the team on that stuff. So sometimes yes, sometimes no. And there has to be a better read on stuff like that. And I wish I could tell you if he lost the locker room or not, but without great access to players, not that you're going to get that in a news conference, but you can listen to players sometimes and you can tell. You can look at players sometimes, you can tell. So you do some dig on stuff like that, and what you hear is that they practice, energetically. They're happy to get some people back. They want to win at home, and just hear a lot of good things. So again, haven't talked to people a lot since Saturday night. Didn't look good, but I hadn't had the feeling before that he lost the team, where a lot of people just assume that season's lost, players are packing it in, and they go home. I don't know that they're there yet, but that would be a bad thing.
Next question. Let's get back to the people. We are men of the people. Austin text ear. Let's say we have a crowd of 41,000. We lay an egg against UCF and lose at home again by 2 touchdowns. That does it, right? Right?
I don't
Again,
think the
second
crowd matters,
looks.
Chris. I don't think the
You
crowd
don't?
matters. I don't, because I mean, a lot of empty seats are still sold seats. It's just people who aren't making the trip, and that's more of a pain for hospitality industry, which West Virginia should feel responsibility there. I'm not sure they do. Um, but still, you have a little bit of guilt if all of a sudden the hotels are empty and the restaurants are empty because you're putting out a 2-8 team or something like that. But you got bigger problems there. I understand. If they look, I mean, yeah, this is like the doomsday clock, Chris, where the hands move every so often. Yeah, I mean it's pretty bad right now after what happened. I don't know who's saying this is good and it should continue. I think people are looking for explanations as to why it will continue, and that is by and large a financial thing. And I'm not sure that that's going to be enough for some people too, but we laid this out. The money is significant. It's not just making a change. I'm not going to go into that again. It's a big number and it's a big boulder you got to move. And that's not easy for people to talk themselves into when the easier way is, can we give him more to do the job better? And giving him more means giving less than what you have to make a change. If they get beat by UCF, yeah, you can make a really easy argument that he's done. What interests me, Chris, is like if they go 6-6, they beat UCF, and I got a home win. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about tanking the end of the season completely with what would that be, a 0-3 finish? Yeah. But if they win and they lose against Texas Tech, like what's really changed? What's the difference between 5-7 and 6-6? You make a bowl game, but what are you bringing them? Think about this too. If you hadn't made a decision, are you waiting on the outcome of a bowl game to bring him back? No, you by and large made up your mind after 6-6. And why wouldn't you by and large made up your mind after 5-7? Or even 5-5, or 5-6? Just like what is really going to change? So again, I'm really careful about what I say out loud about these things and percentages, Chris. I just think it changes so much. Like when we first talked about percentages, Brown hadn't told the fans to pipe down and have fun. They hadn't gotten blown out at home. They hadn't fired a defensive coordinator that they maybe should have fired earlier in the season. Like there's been some major development since then. So 5-7, I don't think is thick ice anymore. It shouldn't be for sure. Not sure how thick ice 6-6 is. But I also wonder, like, does West Virginia have the stomach to do a bowl game with an interim coach? I don't think they do. That's a real risky proposition. I just don't know if they're going to do that. Can you imagine that, Chris? Like this place sending an interim coach to like Orlando or wherever, I don't even know, to play a bowl game while you're trying to hold together a roster, put together a roster, hire like find coaches. Like that's so many spinning plates on the table, and I wonder if they're that agile to do something like that, or if they even want to do that. There's just a lot left to be written, unless it's already been written. And these last two games are just, footnotes to what's already decided.
Orlando for a bowl game. How generous of you.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like Birmingham on December 14th or something like that.
Bangor, Maine, do they have a bowl game?
Yeah. Um, Related question. Going to skip down one. We'll come back to another highly voted one. This one also highly voted, but Rebels 52. How many he says capital S donors? How many capital D donors, I guess, does WVU actually have? We all know about Kendrick. How many others are there? Or is WVU a school of a lot more small donors and ask the fans to chip in to make mincemeat?
Not the latter. I mean, that's a great complaint from people. So they don't have a small donor feeder program, and that not enough people who can give a little bit are treated like they're a strong enough spoke on the wheel. How many big donors, Chris? 15? I don't know. I honestly, I'm careful about. I mean, I'm being careful about what I say here too, but don't speak to a ton of them. I don't know a ton of them. I doubt a ton of them know me, stuff like that. They're important in certain situations. You get to know them over time. There's a couple, yeah, that are big dollar people, and you know the names. You mentioned one of them, but there's others that have their names on stuff, or you recognize them from business or sports or alumni events. I would say like total people that you might. The question here is who is in how many influential people could leverage the athletic director with either financial support or the promise or threat of financial support. That's what I'm guessing. And
Yeah,
if
that's what
that
I'm
number
thinking
is
too.
yeah, if that number is double digits, I'd probably be surprised. So 12 might be too much. So I'd say like maybe 8. Um, don't have a great answer to that one though, because it's just not something. Um, I don't have the donor section in my phone book, I guess is what I'm saying. Like I know some of the names and some of the people. I recognize them on site, but don't have great relationships with them. But I would be surprised if it's like 10. Maybe that's the ballpark number 10.
You recognize them on site, like as in on our website or Vision or both?
Yes. The answer is yes. There are, I
Your
mean, there are,
sports, your sports the place to be. There are
I showed
definitely
you, I
yes,
showed you my suspicion on one was almost certainly on the
yes,
site not long ago, almost certainly based on the context of a post for sure. So that happens.
absolutely.
I
Next
guess I'd be
question.
curious. I guess I'd be
Hmm.
curious what people think of that answer. Like, do they think that number is bigger? Do they think that number is smaller? Because that's
But
like one of those
but to be
disconnects.
clear, if it's 8, for instance, let's just say 8. I think that was the number you threw out. That is on the low end of the totem pole in the world of college football, correct? As far as like big
I think
time,
so.
like like if you go to, I mean, obviously, if you go to Ohio State, what do they have, like 30 donors that would probably be like, hey, you're, I need you to do this, or funding's getting pulled, and they
Yeah.
can actually have something happen.
Mhm.
Maybe not fire football coach kind of money, but because again, that's going to go up as well. The cost of business doing business over there at Ohio State compared to WVU.
I think some would tell you
Um,
though that if you have 8 and you lose one, you only have 7. If you have 30 and you lose one, you
hmm,
still have 29 too. So that goes the other way as well. There could be something good about having a small number, except when you
math
need money.
math checks out on that. That's for sure. Uh, Next question is going to be our team ticker question of the week. Whoop, nope, this side right here. There we go. Look, magnet giveaway night. Who knows what's going on? Upcoming WVU men's schedule. You could see all this information popping up on my team ticker right over my right shoulder. Yes, right shoulder. Team ticker is a one-of-a-kind sports sign for Mountaineer fans. It's a combination of design and function, gives you an entertaining, creative way to display your team pride while providing a unique connection to your favorite team. Whether it's football, men's and women's basketball, baseball, or soccer schools, your team ticker has you covered. The companion mobile app and easy to hang design will have you up and running in minutes. If you're looking for that one eye-catching item to showcase your team, provide a gift for that special Mountaineer fan, Christmas is coming up. Go to teamticker.com and pick up your team ticker today. Use code EARSPORTS, EER Sports, and get $50 off. Mike,
Mhm.
Cobb0012. Fans, including myself, seem to think we have the talent on this team, but not the coaching. Do you think this is accurate? Or is there a talent problem as much as there is a coaching problem?
Well, it's both for sure. Let's isolate the secondary. Garnett Hollis is a good player for a couple years in college. Jaheim Joseph is a good player for a couple years in college. I mean, they paid TJ Crandall good money to come from Colorado State. Dantes Fagan was kind of like below the radar, kind of a throw in. He'd been around a little bit. They had a relationship with him, I believe. You could fill me on that, Chris, but a lot of heavy lifting in the secondary to make it better. Those are good players for one reason or another, or who were paid to be good players one way or the other. Look at that secondary. So have they not brought the best out of those players? Certainly not, right? Have they brought in the best players? You'd have a hard time telling me that they have. And is that their fault? They're not good players. I don't know. Like maybe the jury's out on TJ Crandall, and maybe Garnett Hollis isn't supposed to be doing what he's doing. Jaheim Joseph has been okay. Actually, he's been better than okay. He's been pretty solid since he went back there in the third series of the season. So that's not an issue. And he's actually back next year, I believe, too, right? Um, could be coached better for sure. They could be put in better situations. They could have evolved more so they're not repeating the same mistakes. But then again, you're also asking players to communicate, which is like very Pop Warner. That shouldn't be as problematic as it was. So that's a player thing too. And the answer is it's not one. It's never one thing. I think they have talent. I think that West Virginia has oversold some of the talent. And I think that maybe we have taken for granted some of the talent too. Like I don't think people know how good Faturma Moba really is or what a get TJ Jackson was. But you could also look at other parts of the defense and say, well, they could have done better there. They could have spent better there. They could have coached better here for sure. Offensively, Chris, I feel much different. Jaden Bray was unfortunately like a whiff. Justin Robinson could be better, sure. If he had gotten his PT earlier in the season, maybe he's working out some of these things, but it's really hard to forgive that drop. And they didn't do a whole lot else in the portal except like, yeah, they got Cole Taylor a couple years ago. That helps. And I think that their coaching on offense is their coaching on offense, you see signs more often, more convincingly than you do on defense. And they haven't devoted the resources to going out and buying parts of their offense like they have on defense, which may be the question answered in form. They don't have the best talent, the most like coveted acquired talent on offense, but they've had a better offense and defense. They've gone out, they've spent money and tried to identify talent on defense, and it hasn't been as good as the offense.
All right, let me read you the overall commitment rankings for West Virginia on 24/7 Sports. This includes your high schoolers and your transfers. Now, again, I'm not just towing the company line here. Like our network and our analysts are good at their job. They have routinely shown over the years, and we've compared it to the other networks and everything else, that they hit more than they miss on these things and that they are pretty darn accurate. Perfect? No. Pretty darn accurate, though. Pretty darn good at their jobs. So keep that in mind. But West Virginia's, so let's say the last four classes that would make up the majority of this team, I would say West Virginia was ranked 61st, 48th, 42nd, and 35th in the last four classes, going backwards, by the way. So getting worse each year, by the way.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. And, but you take those 4 years, you add them up, divide them by four. I believe that works out to about 46th, 47th in the country. So let's say 50th. We'll just round it there at 50. West Virginia at 5-5. Are they at 50 school? Like, are they like the 50th best team in the country? Go pull up ESPN's Football Power Index, number 54. Like West Virginia's talent, according to our rankings, have them about the 50th best team, a mediocre middle of the college football world team. West Virginia is 5-5, and according to many metrics, a mediocre middle of the college football world team. Are you hoping that you can coach it up better than the talent that you bring in? Sure. Everybody hopes that. Even the guys that bring in the 25 stars per class are hoping that they can then somehow make them 6 stars. I don't know. But everybody's hoping that their coaches are good enough to make the talent better than what they are ranked coming out of high school. But I'm with you. I believe you said the phrase they've oversold the talent that maybe is on the roster. And I agree
Oh,
with
yeah.
you on that. I don't think the talent, my thing is the coaching good? It could be better. Is the talent good? It needs to be better.
Mhm.
West Virginia is playing at the level of the talent that they brought in right now. And I do think there's been some overselling of the talent of it. You remember in the preseason, this is the best, the longest, the most athletic secondary they've had. This is the best corners, very clear starting two. It's been terrible. And you know, that kind of stuff. And they don't do that often. They did, I feel like, and part of the reason where I was like, man, do I buy into this? Because they don't very often come out in the preseason and start gloating about certain positions, especially ones that are not obvious.
Mhm.
They did this time around, and it was wrong. Very, very wrong. I don't know if that was a bad read, just trying to be confident. I'm not sure. But again, it's a talent. It's their coaching can be better, but it's a talent problem. They have to get better talent in on the program. If they want to be better than middle of the road, you got to recruit better than middle of the road.
That's gonna be hard to do right now too.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not going to get easier. Absolutely not. I mean, if you
Yeah.
don't have if you're going to put together a 500 team every year on the field, it's going to be harder to convince high school recruits and even transfers. If you're not going to have the NIL money to go out there and purchase better talent, yeah. Again, it's gone 35th to 42nd to 48th to 61st from the 2021 to 2024 class. And 2025, let's see what I mean, it does obviously didn't have transfers and stuff in there yet, but currently 41st with the high school recruits. And again,
But
that's
that surprised me. Let's put a pin in this for a second too. Like I thought you were reading those numbers in reverse. So like the higher number is most recent, and that's the opposite. How much of that is the portal and the fact that teams are able to really inflate what they're doing with talent acquisition by being able to pay or being a brand name, a winning team, and being able to go out and get somebody. Whereas West Virginia has some brand name, doesn't have the deep pockets, and doesn't have the recent wins to lure people.
it's funny because I think some of the schools that end up jumping West Virginia, it's in large part because they get like a lot of very good transfers. Like they, just load up on them, or they one or the other. Like they either have a top five composite rank, and then maybe not as many or like for high schoolers, and then not as many transfers, or they kind of take it light on high school and then just crush it in transfers and just get all the best players. West Virginia just kind of routinely is like, hey, they got the 35th best high school and the 40th best transfer class, and that kind of transfers low or translates lower than 40th because again, there's other teams that maybe are 40th in high school and then second in transfer and just kind of jump West Virginia. So yeah,
Mm.
you it's hard to sell. Transfers are transferring to a new school for three reasons. One, money. West Virginia's not doing well there. We've discussed that. The NIL funds are not what they need to be. Winning championships, that's it's not happening. Or playing time. And if a guy's transferring for playing time to West Virginia, that means they are either a bench player somewhere else, and they're a bench player for a reason, or they're transferring up from a lower level, and they were at a lower level typically for a reason. So is West Virginia getting those marquee transfers? Like, no, they're just not because none of the three reasons are working in their favor. Ready to move on?
I'm ready. It's a good
All right.
explanation. Mine was a little bit different than yours, but the way you hit it with like they're actually performing to their rankings, that does seem like a coaching issue there too. If they can't get
Yeah.
elevated, you're as good as your talent. That's a problem.
Yeah. Dub V got M with the next question. At what point does Ren find himself in the crosshairs with fans? As I mean, based off some of the comments on the board, I feel like it's already happening, but I don't know if that's fair. Your thoughts?
It's just not the feeling I get from anybody I talk to that he's in any trouble.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
if he botches this, like, and they bring it back for 2 more years or whatever, sure, I guess. But I just guy's got a lot of support to do what he has to do right now.
I don't think there is. Now, has he made the best decision in the world? We'll see. Some of it's still got to pan out. I'm not sure I agree with all of them, but has there been an athletic director that got thrown into the fire worse than him? I mean, he showed up and they were like, you have 48 hours to make a decision on Neal Brown. And I feel like that decision might have even been made before he ever even arrived the first time around. Um, and then the Huggins situation you had to deal with right away. The women's basketball situation had to deal with right away. Baseball like had to quickly, on the fly to keep Sabins around and discuss all that with Maisie. And I know those two probably Maisie and Sabins probably worked out most of that by themselves, but then the athletic director has to be part of that. So it has not been an easy couple years for him right off the bat at West Virginia for sure.
They sponsor the tip at basketball games, Chris. The guy's doing some work too. Why can't we sponsor the coin toss? That's far more exciting.
Yes.
I'll stop. Go ahead.
You don't want 17 in a row? Just throw it
17,
out
man.
there. Go ahead.
People are noticing now.
Yep. Oh, they are. Huh.
Mm.
I'm gonna skip this. A good question from Udio 10. We'll get to that. We're gonna save that for a three-minute video. Um, Here we go. We're looking for some fiscally responsible answers here, Michael.
Ooh.
NC Mountaineer. NIL is meant to pay the players. The House settlement, the $20 million number, is meant to pay the players from the school directly. How are WVU in terms of athletic department and CRT, Country Roads Trust, sorting this out? To whom should we as fans be giving money in terms of a priority perspective? Should one of the two not be giving guidance here? They are allowed to communicate now, some, aren't they? More directly. If I have $100 to give, what breakdown between the two should I spend it?
I mean, that's up to you there, how you want to do it, where you want to give it. There probably could be more clear communication, like a $100 bill traffic cop, so to speak, where I want to go with this. How do I get there? I think that's probably a reasonable thing. Chris, I think you're going to see NIL come in house more and more in form of some type of, I don't know, what, like 501c3, an LLC or whatever. Would that mean that West Virginia buys Country Roads Trust or absorbs it or acquires it and renames it? I just think you're going to have a CRT office in the Coliseum, something like that. I just think you're going to see that in house. There's, it's just a smarter way to do it now. We've stopped pretending the collectives and schools are separate anymore. The rules don't really even lean that way now. Yeah, you can communicate. Sure, you can do a whole lot with one for the other. But the fact is, like, it's so not NIL. It's just not. It's payment. It is. Like, you're not like, are you seeing a lot of players on commercials? No. Are you seeing like a lot of players on billboards anymore in town? A couple. Like I remember it was a big deal when Eric Stevenson and Jesse Edwards were on a billboard. I don't know. I've never seen Garnett Hollis on a billboard anywhere. Like, and that guy made some money to come here. So
Mike, we got to put
I
a
just,
trigger warning up now because you said the word billboard. We gotta warn everybody now. And
um,
why'd you do that?
yeah, sorry. So I guess it's not NIL. Like you're not getting paid to sponsor products, to promote events. You're not. Like you might get some money to do a camp or an autograph signing. That's just extra on top of the chunk of change you get for simply signing with a school. And if we're gonna do that, just have it as part of your university now, and then you can pay it out of there. What's going to be difficult, Chris, is telling everybody you're getting house settlement payouts, and NIL is no longer a separate thing. Like you're going to get NIL, but it's going to be on top of that. You know, you're going to get one check instead of two, and people are like, "Wait a minute, I'm not getting my NIL." No, you are, but it's not what it was 2 years ago. It's not what it was when you were going to a school before you transferred. It's not what it was when you were in high school when you were fielding offers. It's not what you thought it was going to be just because you got in the portal. It's going to be different. And like if it does come in house and your NIL comes from the university and it's just an extra payment in addition to your scholarship and all that, it's going to be hard for even me to explain, or it's going to be hard to explain to students, athletes, all that stuff. Screwed. It's going to be hard to explain to players. Student athletes kind of a misnomer anymore. Um, that'll be a challenge, but I think that to the question, that money's all going to go into one bank now, and you might be able to specifically direct it, but I think you're going to be paying West Virginia and NIL as opposed to having to decide to pay one or the other.
I'm shocked to hear that these players are getting paid $1,000 for a 30-minute podcast where that doesn't work.
Seen a lot of those
That's
too. Seen a lot of those players doing their podcasts for four figures.
yeah,
Seen
all
a
over the place.
couple. I mean, not a lot. It's not. That's bogus. Whatever.
Well, it goes back to my point when people were asking about it on the board. Businesses aren't paying $1,000 for somebody to come on their podcast. That's just a donation. Like the podcast is just a side perk of it. It's not actually worth that much money to a business owner to do that. It's just a different way for them to donate money to the school. Um, I agree with you. By the way, I think it's all going to end up in one pocket right now. I would say if I were, it's your money, you do whatever you want with it. But I would say probably NIL before the school. Like, no offense to the school trying to figure out the $20 million. That's for them to figure out. Like if you have to go back to academia and figure out where to get some money from there, do it. But NIL is probably where I could tell you that's what the football team's going to tell you. If you ask some of the coaches or some of the for basketball or football or any of the sports, they're going to tell you donate to the Country Roads Trust. So that's my answer to that question there.
I think
Um,
that there needs to be like a third party that just creates the rainy day fund.
yeah.
It's not NIL. It's not, funding for the MAC for this sport or whatever. Just here's a fund that may have $500,000 in it for a rainy day. Just some third party do that. And if it means you got to fire a coach or hire a coach, whatever, that helps. It's raining. You got this money. Go for it.
Crowtownier, which I touched on this, but this was upvoted. Was the Pitt loss just an example of the matchup issues Darren DeVries will experience this year without a true five, or was it a throwaway game where the team had a bad game overall? Do you think this season will be similar to Beeline's first season?
It'll be an interesting answer the next time this happens, Chris, because Eduardo Andre played very well and more time than usual, but he also responded, did some really good things. And I wonder if they're learning more about him and they can put him into better situations, or if he's just going to be able to stand up against a Hunter Dickinson or somebody big that he's going to see before too long and play defense. That's a takeaway from me. There's a lot of negatives out of that game. I understand that, but I wonder if the coach goes, you know what? Big fella's a little bit better than I thought. He can hold his own. I'm not really scared about having to gimmick it up without a center anymore because maybe we do indeed have one. I'd watch that, see how that goes in the next couple of games and weeks and times they run into the big guy. A lot of that was a confluence of some strange factors too. Hansberry getting the flagrant right away, and then a second foul coming back in, which ill-advised, I think, but I understand. Like, let's try to end the half on a good note. Let's try to get this guy some momentum, maybe, and he goes in the locker room feeling better. And the second half's different. It's just that it was a 22-point game at that point, I think, and the risk of a third foul probably far outweighs the reward. But honestly, that game is lost at that point, so that's not really a critique of the coaching there. I understand it, and I don't understand all at one. In that situation, the coach usually wins because he probably knows more than I do. The one thing I noticed, Chris, and this was just in warmups too, Pitt was just stronger, just bigger and stronger. And like you watch it during the game, West Virginia bounced off of them all game. And Pitt didn't. Pitt stood its ground. And it was like setting screens and fighting through screens. It was easier for one team than the other. Driving with the ball and then also holding your line on defense was easier for one team than the other. This little contact, Pitt absorbed and kept going, and West Virginia kind of bounced around a little bit. That's not going anywhere. That'll be a tricky thing too. The shooting, Pitt was hot early on, not later on. The all eyes on Tucker DeVries, probably going to be normal, but you don't have Hansberry, more problematic too. So a bunch of like one-off stuff that may happen again, Chris, but that was just more of a the game situation. But I think those could be repeated if Hansberry gets in foul trouble, if there's no number two option on offense. But how often are all those things going to happen? That's for West Virginia to guard against.
Yeah, I answered earlier that I won't have a clear cut answer on this until Bahamas at the very earliest. But also, my biggest issue with it, and I said it in my immediate reaction to that Pitt game, was not so much that it was like the five that was a problem. And yes, their big man Diaz Graham ended up with, I mean, I think he ended up with double digit rebounds, but most of those came after the game was essentially over, like after, in the second half. In the first half, he only had three. It was the other guys that were grabbing all the rebounds. It was a 6'2" guard, was Jalen Lowe. Like he had 7 rebounds in the first half. And I mentioned after the first game of the year, if West Virginia is going to be competitive on the glass, it's going to have to be a full team effort. I pointed out a couple instances where DeVries and Okani or DeVries and Hansberry were boxing out, and then in came, say, Javon Small to grab a rebound. That's the kind of stuff West Virginia has to do. And instead, it was Pitt that was doing that. It was Pitt that whose guards were getting these rebounds over West Virginia's guards rather than, the big man truly just dominating the glass and making West Virginia look small.
Mm. Yeah, good point.
Um, Next question, man. I'm gonna skip around a little bit now. Now we're getting down to not very many upvoted questions. So I'm not saying these are bad questions, just typically come later. Um, quick one. They asked it. They asked it. So now you have to answer it. J Card 304. What percentage do we have of making the conference championship game? Do it.
It's like 0.07, not even 0.7, like 0.07, I think. Like a lot has to happen, but like it's still alive. I just did the math, but yeah, it's not great.
Uh, WV Rugger. What, if anything, would make you optimistic about the future of WVU athletics or WVU in general? Give me some
Me?
hope. Give me hope, Mike.
I mean, they put a press room in the Coliseum. That'd be sweet. Park closer. That'd be nice. Like I'm just media things, right? For fans, you're. I just think the root of this is money. If if that number of 8 donors was 18, and the number of commas was one larger, sure. If they had more money, that would solve a lot of problems, I think. Like they could go out and do better with NIL in football and basketball. They could fund some fixes in their programs. Like I don't think football wants for a whole lot, but they're at the point now where maybe they could put grass in their practice field. Just and money solves that. You don't have to go around and ask people for stuff because every time you get one yes from somebody, you're going to get two no's from the same person. Like that's just kind of how that stuff works. So it's hard to do when you don't have the money and you have to go out and get it from people. If they had more money, you would feel better. So buy Powerball tickets, put the Mountaineers in your will and testament. I don't know. Hope that people can open up their purse strings or that West Virginia comes up with new and effective ways to raise money. Not sure what it is, but you could spend a long time about, oh, I feel better if I had this and this and this. But if they just had money, as we've explained, they they have an income problem. That's true. Um, they'd be a lot better off, and they probably have more sunny days if they had more money.
Well, consider me, I guess this is my Ren Baker apologists or department as a whole apologist podcast here. Because overall, leadership decisions, as far as athletics are concerned, have been overwhelmingly positive. Like, I get it. Like, football, there's some uncertainty, some unease, some angst, whatever you want to say. But go through and look at almost every other sport where a decision or a change or something has been made in the last couple of years, and it seems like they've all been the right one. Baseball's on the way up. Maisie did a great job. Set up a plan of succession that seems to be working with Saban's. Now, I mean, hadn't actually coached the game yet, but recruiting has been well, retention has been going well, so things are on the up and up there. Everybody was seemed pleased with the swimming and diving coaching decision. The women's basketball team is what, top 15 in the country with a new coach as well. Soccer, men's and women's, both pretty dominant. So you go through all of the sports in West Virginia's athletic department, and it seems like most of them are trending in the right direction, which tells me that the athletic department, the leaderships there, are making correct decisions. They are making good reads. Football is a completely different animal because what you just said, money, 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 NIL. So even if you do make the right decisions, it might not matter because of money. But at least the base is there. The start of it is there, that this athletic department, the leaderships involved, all the people that are involved in these decisions, not just Ren Baker, but there's others as well, seem to know what they're doing when they're looking for a coach and how they can keep programs moving in the right direction. They got to figure out football, they got to figure out money, but the other parts seem to be going the right way.
Fair. People don't want to hear, but
Um,
by and large, true.
yeah. Here's a question. This was a short one. It probably needed a short answer, but I wanted you to answer it just in case to make sure we're on the same boat here. Um, uh, Beer 304 starts talking about the last couple games, and then he says if WVU loses the next two games, the athletic department misses out on a $4 million payday from a bowl game. Correct? Is it 4 million? Is that what our math says? Not that high,
I mean, everybody loses money. It all goes into a pot.
right? And do you get more? Like, yeah, so all the bowl money goes into a pot and then it's distributed across the Big 12. Do you get more if you are one of the teams that make a bowl game rather than one of the ones that does not? Do I remember that correctly?
Ooh. So do they? That would make. I mean, that'd be fair, but that's kind of not the all
You,
for
you
one
know, like
mentality.
say out of the 16 teams, like 10 of them make a bowl. So those 10 get 1.2 shares while, the ones that do not only get one.
I think it's even distribution.
Okay. So it's not
But
4
that's
million. You're not
yeah.
losing
I
out
guess
on 4
the
million if
big
West Virginia to make it.
yeah the big point is like you used to go to the Gator Bowl and you get like a $1.8 million payday, and that was you use that to pay for your expenses and you clear some money, and ta-da, you got 500 grand you didn't have before. Not the case now. Those payouts go to conferences, and I want to say they do even distribution, but you might be right. It might be participatory. Like you actually have to play in the game to get the reward. But that's the gist of it.
All right. Let's see. I think we've answered all the questions that were had at least seven upvotes. I think we just double checking. Was there one that you saw that we haven't discussed yet? There's two of them that I'm saving for 3-minute videos, so
Okay. I
we'll
don't want
we'll
to say
catch
anything
up on
'cause
them.
I think we got all the good ones and the ones I expected to get to. So we got a couple that caught me off guard as well, including that
Okay.
last one.
Um. All right. That's
Save it.
Real quick, let's you and I, because you and I discussed it pre-pod. So we'll finish
Okay.
on this because I don't remember this. Salty Dog 8159 says, did Neal Brown say at some point years ago that quote, no one will have to tell me when it is time to go? I have a memory of that or something similar that he said. I've searched everywhere but can't find a recording of it. I do not remember that. Do you?
Nope. I
Okay.
clearly remember Bill Stewart saying it. I remember that becoming just a huge anchor for him toward the end. Um, and even if Neal Brown said it, there's no way he's walking away. There's no
Okay.
way. That does not happen. It sounds cool. You can hold the guy. Oh, you said this before. I'd have to see that. I'd have to see the video of it. Like I can find some fun videos from the past if you like to. And I remember these things fairly well. Like I don't know where my car keys are sometimes. Couldn't tell you where my wallet is right now, but like moments like that, I usually am able to recall. I specifically remember that for Stewart. I don't ever remember Brown saying that. Like I can remember him really mad after the Texas Tech game his first year, saying we'll build a winner here and all that. Um, have shared that before. I don't remember that. Um,
So this is
Maybe
the
I'm
Ear
wrong.
Sports message board version of the Mandela effect. What was that?
Right.
The one that where you are certain that something happened or was done and it actually didn't. Because what was the one that I was thinking of that I always the Sinbad movie. I swear, and I think a lot of people do. Sinbad, the actor, was in a movie where he was a genie, and that does not exist. And I it does in my mind. It's somewhere. I'm telling you. It's the Mandela effect. All right, Mike. That's it for now. We'll come back with it again. There's a lot of questions in there, and kudos to our members for again. I feel like sometimes when we're in these situations, some of our members can get into a rut, and just ask the same question over and over again. Fire Neal Brown. When are you firing Neal Brown? Good job getting a little variety, a little spice of life in there this time around. Lots of questions. I'll answer a lot of them. The rest of them in a VIP mailbag that'll go out on Tuesday. And we got two more, one that'll go Wednesday, one that'll go Friday in a 3-minute video. So keep an eye out for all that.
Chris, do you think that Sinbad was in Blue Chips?
No.
Okay.
See, that's
So
what, yeah.
actually,
Isn't that the thing? Like, no, the Genie movie was the one with Shaq instead of Sinbad.
I would probably watch Sinbad and Blue Chips, like a remake now. That'd be pretty good.
Pretty good.
Listen, if you could find the video, let us know because I think we all need to see this. It would certainly help ourselves with our confidence issues and our memory. And also, if you can find the video of Neal Brown saying that he would have stepped down if he got things wrong, send us that one too. Uh, until next time, I'm Mike Casaza.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
We'll talk to you then.